In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a very simple automation that generates a LinkedIn post automatically anytime you want it using AI, a bit of Google Forms, and something called make.com. It's pretty easy, probably take about 20 to 30 minutes. And once you've done it, you can create LinkedIn posts to your heart's content forever. Now, this all came about because recently we built ourselves and our clients a quick LinkedIn post generator, just to get people used to the idea of how automation works and how easy it can be to have something that makes your content, it's good content and it works, and you can do it really quickly. And because it works so well, a lot of people asked us to build them one. And it's kind of like a doorway or an easy way into the world of automation and AI. We build much more complicated stuff than this in general, but this is something that's easy for people to understand. It's easy for them to try themselves. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to show you a video on how this works using the platforms I've talked about before, which in this case are Make, which is a bit like Zapier. It's kind of a fairly cheap automation platform that strings anything together. Perplexity, which is an AI that's pretty good at searching and scraping the internet, perhaps a little bit better than ChatGPT 5 for that. And obviously ChatGPT and Google Forms. Now we're going to start with making a Google form, and then you'll see how we chain it all together from there. But the starting point, if you like, the trigger that we're going to use is our Google form. So let's start with our Google form. We're going to call it, I don't know, my LinkedIn automation or something. So my LinkedIn automation, like that. One. In case you make more than one, in case you give it to other people to use, those sorts of things. So the first thing we're going to want is probably just put a name. So we've got a question. We're going to call that first name. So you know which member of staff has made this, and you can make sure it's emailed to them with their name on it. And we want a short answer box. That's it. So first name or first name, like that. Then we want another question, which will be website. So obviously you know about your own company and your own website, but perhaps you've got different websites you want to make LinkedIn posts about. Having a website in there will give the automation a lot of background about what you're interested in finding out about, perhaps who you are, your company profile, that sort of stuff. So we'll have a website. The next thing we want is your LinkedIn profile. Because the AI will then go and have a look at that and figure out what your sort of the way you write and who you are, and get a feel for that. We can have a look at some of the posts you've written on LinkedIn, and it will give you an idea of the way you write and try and match that as best as possible in the automation. And then when it makes a post, it'll sound much more written like you. In fact, generally with AI, the more background you can give it, the better it works. Again, this is a short answer. Then we want what's this post going to be about? So what's the subject of our LinkedIn post? Is it going to be about something specific? Is it going to be about keywords? Is it going to be out about something that was in the news recently? So we tend to try and keep it fairly clear. Again, a short answer question. So theme of LinkedIn post. And let's just leave it like that. Probably to give it a bit more of a space, we'll give it a paragraph, so you can add a bit more text if you want to do that. It depends on your choice at this point. And lastly, to keep it simple, the thing we really want is who's the audience, who's it aimed at. So I'd say audience profile. Okay, and now we've made a form. Let's just make sure that form is called the same thing there, because that's going to come in handy later. And let's press publish. And we need to make sure that anybody who is a responder can be anybody. So in terms of its accessibility, anybody can see it. So let's press that and have done and publish. Before we go any further, just a quick note. I'm Shane and I run a company called Flycast Media. We specialize in marketing for people in the financial industry and fintech. We do everything from lead generation, done for you automation services, and we find investors for your funds, as much as make sure that your PR is done properly and your content is compliant. We save people hundreds of hours and therefore thousands of pounds with automations that take the donkey work out of everyday business. So going back to our Google form, the next thing we need to do is we need to pre-populate some answers in the form itself before we move on to the next stages. I know this seems kind of counterintuitive at this point, but it really does make a difference later. So let's get the link from the published form, which is there, copy that, and then put that in our browser. And now we've got the real form rather than the form that is getting built. So I've put my name, I've put my company website, and I've put my LinkedIn profile. I went and pasted that from there. And I'm thinking, okay, what can we do that's a bit easier to put together? So I've got gold versus Bitcoin. And my answer, my audience profile is, I mean, gold versus Bitcoin is a bit of an old and boring argument at this point, but let's just use that. And my audience profile will be IFAs. Let's just go with IFAs and fund managers and submit that. And those answers have been submitted. If we go back to our form builder, which I stupidly closed, but there it is, you can now see we have a response, which will come in handy later. So what we need to do is press link to Google Sheets, create a new spreadsheet, and we will have a spreadsheet of answers waiting with a populated answer for us to use later in our make.com automation. And that is literally all we need to do with forms now. As you can see, it's made us a spreadsheet. It's given us a timestamp. It's given us the first name, the website, LinkedIn profile, the theme of the post, and the audience profile. So far we've got a form that's been filled in. Whoopie-doo. However, this is where it gets interesting. So if we go over to Make, you can sign up for Make. It's a pretty easy platform. It's very cheap. I think the free plan will get you a few posts, and it looks a lot more complicated than it is. It's very similar to Zapier. I just find it easier and more flexible. We build quite a lot of complicated stuff on it. In fact, we have quite a lot of scenarios that do a lot of different things. So what you would do is you go into scenarios and you would create new easy for you to say, you would create new scenario, and it gives you a range of options. There's quite a lot of stuff there because I use lots of different sorts of software, but it gives you a range of options, and you will search for Google Forms. Just search for the word form and you will find Google Forms. And that opens a sort of options panel where you can choose the form you want. And what you want here is actually watch responses to a form in Google Sheets. This is the easiest way to get your answers into your system. And this is the trigger that gets everything else going. So let's select that. And then it says, of course, can you link your Google account to make.com? And I've already done that, but you would literally press that button, press that and sign in with Google, and your Google account would then be linked, and mine already is. So I'm going to close that, and it's say, what spreadsheet do I want? And I want something that says LinkedIn, I think. There's probably more than one. What was my form called? My LinkedIn automation. So let's see if that populates. My LinkedIn automation 1. There we go. So that's there. It's populated it. We'll give it a limit of 2 answers. So we don't want it to look back through all the answers if a lot of people end up using this. So we'll give it a limit of 2 answers and press save. And that is literally, choose the sheet, sorry, beg your pardon. Choose the sheet, which is form responses. You can see that down there. And it is literally our trigger finished, waiting to do its work. Choose where to start. I'll choose manually, which will be, you'll see our answers have already populated there, and I'm going to choose them and press save. And that is that. So the next thing we need to add is Perplexity. Now, Perplexity is very like ChatGPT, but it works slightly differently. It's pretty good at scouring the internet, and it thinks kind of differently. A lot of finance pros use it more than ChatGPT, although, of course, there is Claude, there is ChatGPT 5, which is even more improved. There's so much choice, and it changes almost weekly, that by the time you watch this, maybe there'll be a better way to scrape the internet for your information. But we find Perplexity is the most reliable, and it's really the same. It doesn't take much to set up. So what you need to do is you need to go into make.com again, and you just need to add another module. And lo and behold, would you think it, we just have to search for Perplexity. And it comes up and it says Perplexity AI. And we want to create a chat completion. And then it says, can you connect your Perplexity account to our machinery? And that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to create a connection. And it's asking you for an API key. Now, all of these things, we don't know what an API key, it's just a way of connecting one piece of software to another. It's kind of all over the internet these days. You've probably come across the term before. Don't worry about it too much. It's just like a connector. So what we're going to do is go and get our Perplexity API key and plug it into this. And you can get this with a free Perplexity account. You just have to pay for the usage of the key itself. So if we go over here and we go to our account and we look for APIs, you do the same thing. You can even just type into Perplexity, show me up my API key. It will show you your API keys here. And you can go to APIs and then you just press create key. Call it something. I'll call it LinkedIn 3. Create key and you've got a key. And we'll go back to that. One thing you'll have had to do is, this is a paid service, but it's pennies. It's literally pennies. You'll probably have to put a credit card in at this point. You don't need to pay for a professional account. You just need to have some credits topped up to use this for scraping. It's a lot better than ChatGPT. And I think it's going the extra step to put your credit card in is worth it, because quite frankly, it is pennies. If we look at our invoicing portal, the last time we topped up was June the 5th. And we haven't dropped up since, and that's about 6 months ago now. So that means I've still got $15 in credits. We've spent nothing. So it's well worth it for the accuracy that it produces. So if we go back to our API keys page, where that's gone, there, sorry, too many tabs open, and we copy our API key. You can put that on a text document to remember it for later, or you can put it directly into make.com and press save. And hopefully that will link them. And it has. So at this point, Perplexity is basically just waiting for your instructions. So we've given it a certain amount of data there, LinkedIn profile, post we want to write about, that type of stuff, subject matter. And now it's writing, this is waiting for instructions to do something. And that's pretty much the same as if you go to ChatGPT and you say, I want you to do this thing, write me a post about that, write me a post about this, except that it's waiting and ready to do it. So you don't have to keep posting that in and do it manually. So Perplexity is a little bit different from the others when it comes to using automations. It just wants a format that's slightly different from the rest of the world. It's still words and stuff, but it needs to be wrapped in a certain type of file type, which is JSON in this case. So we're just got user and the content. So it's asking for information from the module before. And that's what Make does. It asks for information from the module before it, because that it thinks, or it knows, is going to be relevant for what we're doing. So with Make, and for all the prompts we give you, we've got this ready for you. And all you have to do is change details that you want to use. So I've got it as a Word document. It's basically normal instructions you have, but wrapped in a slightly different, slightly small piece of a code snippet. So it's kind of obvious. Research this subject thoroughly for LinkedIn content preparation. Subject of LinkedIn posts, the target audience, things we've talked about, audience profile, LinkedIn profile, and it's got some instructions about how to write the post. Now you can change this how you want, but we found this is a pretty good catch-all for everything we need. So I'm going to take that, including the last bracket, which is down there, Control C, and drop that into our automation. And it's almost ready. One thing you'll see straight away is I've left these X's in places where you need to attach the tags from the previous module, a bit like when you do email or merge tags in email. It needs to know where the information is coming from, so where the last information is coming from. So the first thing we're seeing is website, so let's delete the X's, and then you can scan up and down here, and what we're looking for is website, and that now populates that. Subject, which is theme in this case, the theme of our LinkedIn post. So theme of a LinkedIn post, let's put that there. Target audience. So I've left the X's in for you guys. You can just change it yourself. So target audience. Where's that gone? Audience profile. Your LinkedIn profile, if provided, doesn't have to be used. I'm going to put LinkedIn profile. There we go. Get rid of the X's. And we've got audience twice, so I think I'll get rid of that. And that's it. Just got to save that, having chosen role as user. Max tokens will go with 1500 in there. That should be enough. Don't worry about what that means, and press save. And that is the Perplexity module done. So the next thing you do is you add your OpenAI ChatGPT module, which is there. And what you're looking for is create a completion prompt, basically. And you get a similar box to what we've used before. We don't need to worry too much about the differences between the two. Again, you just need to add an API key. Now, to find your API key, it's slightly different to Perplexity. You have to log into OpenAI, go to settings. Once you've logged in, go to API keys, create a new secret key, call it something obvious. I'm just calling it LinkedIn 3 because we called the last one that. Select default project and press create secret key. And you get given a key which you can copy and drop straight into your ChatGPT module. I'd advocate keeping this somewhere, not because you're going to need it later, just because it's easier in case you cut and paste it into the wrong place. That's what we're going to do. And the other thing you need, which isn't obvious, is if you go back to OpenAI, go back to settings, press done. It wants your organization key as well, which you will have made when you first set up. So you can take that too, and you can put that in your module. And press save. And it's now happily connected. The model we want is ChatGPT 5 system, because that's the best one around at the moment. So right now we're at the stage where we add our prompt, and this is almost exactly the same as using ChatGPT standalone, where you would put your prompt in there and ask it to write it. And of course, we've got ready-made prompts to show you how to string them all together. It's a bit customized for us and what we do, but you could quite easily customize it to yourself because it's much easier than what is shown in the Perplexity module. So I'll go to our prompt, and this is how we use it. So using the research brief below and the provided details, write a concise LinkedIn post that feels authoritative, business relevant, and stuff like that. It focuses on the subject XXX, that's important in a minute, and has some rules about how it should be written, length that it should be written in, first line should be bold and attaching attention grabbing headline, and stuff like that. The sort of stuff you use to try and get a social post that gets some traction. One thing that I have missed here is auto profile. That would be ours, and I would say stuff about how we write and who I am and that sort of thing. You should go ahead and add your own, but for the moment I'm just going to take this out of this prompt, but that's certainly where you should put yours. Even if it's just a little paragraph about you and what you've done, it can make a difference to how this writes for you. So I've taken it out. And the last thing, we've got style guardrails, things that it should and shouldn't do, types of spellings it uses, making sure it uses UK English spelling rather than American, depending on where you are. Of course, you can change that, and a quality check. So that is basically our prompt, and I'm just going to cut and paste the whole thing in. Let's take that, Control C, and put it in there. First, I'm going to cut the whole lot in, then I'm going to expand it so we're going to have a proper look at it. And I'm going to go to where we've got X is the thing. Okay, subject. What was the subject? So the subject was what we put into our Google form in the first place. So the theme of your LinkedIn post, that's what that was. So let's get rid of that. Providing first name, and that's obvious. Website, full background is again, website, LinkedIn profile if added. Theme of the post, again, just to hammer that down. Audience profile, which is obvious again, your audience profile, your LinkedIn profile. I don't need that twice, so I've got that twice. Let's get rid of that. And then it's saying, what did you get from Perplexity? And Perplexity is here. And what you're looking for is choices, message, content, because it's the content. And sorry, I put that in the wrong place. Get rid of those X's and put it there. Message, content. And then press save. And that is that module done. Now, because I'm paranoid, we always have one last module. You could stop here and then just get it sent to yourself with the next module. But what we tend to do is we have an editor module, because we find we get much better results if we say, thanks for that content. Now, could you just make it a bit nicer? And this is almost exactly the same as before, except we add another OpenAI module, exactly the same as before, create a completion. It's already connected, so we don't need to add our API key or anything. It's a create a completion. The model is still GPT-5 system. It's still user. And we have a text content there. And what we're going to do is look at that now, which is this. So here is our ready-made prompt for that module. And you can see it is sort of designed to, I suppose, take the AI out of AI. It's designed to make it more human. It's designed to make it more like you, and to avoid the sort of phrases that you often see AI, which is unrestricted and unprogrammed properly, using things like in the fast-paced world of. And it still does it, but it's taking out the sort of, it can still use some of these terms, but it's taking out the sort of terms that we don't want to use all the time. So it's giving it a bit of logic. And the reason we keep this as a separate module, it works much better than if you try and get it to do both of these tasks at the same time. So you've literally got to just cut and paste this in. Again, you can change some of it, but because this is an actual module about how to use a language, you probably don't need to customize this to yourself. So we're just gonna put the whole thing in and then chain it to the module before it, so it gets the data from that. And it's pretty, once you start doing this sort of behavior gets pretty sort of intuitive after a while. So open that up, paste all your words in, make it bigger, because again, it's like working for a bloody letterbox. And we want to change those X's to the data that's coming from the editor module. Choices, message, content. And press save. And that's ready. And what we should do at this point, even though this isn't going anywhere, we should run this and look for any errors. So we can do something like run once or run from, choose where to start. So we'll just choose where to start from. Choose manually from the last answer. We've got some answers. There it is. Let's press save. And let's press run once and see what happens and see if anything breaks. See, it's working away there. It's taking the data we've put into the form. Perplexity is now working. It's thinking about, it's scraping, it's looking at the internet and deciding how much of that data it needs. Then it's going to pass it on to OpenAI like that. And that's writing. And now we can see that's finished. And the reason we did that was to make sure that each module was passing on the data in the correct way from one to the next, and each module was processing that data and nothing's broken. So the next thing I tend to do at this point is I say, okay, that's working, but let's just stop confusion, rename each module according to the task that it does, so I can remember it easily. It's not such a problem with a small workflow like this, but when you start building pretty big ones, it can make a difference. So stuff that has multiple AIs and multiple tasks, if you haven't labeled each module what it does, it can get confusing. So I would tend to call this something like, so you right click on it and you can call it scraper or something else, something that makes sense. But I call it scraper because it's scraping the subject matter that you're after. This one I would call LinkedIn writer. This one I would call LinkedIn editor, obviously. Oh, surprisingly. And press save. And do not forget to press save for the whole scenario down here, because I have forgotten that and had to start again a couple of times. So down at the bottom here, do not forget to press save there on occasion too. So now we've got something that looks like a clean workflow. At this point, I would then go and try something different in my LinkedIn form. So I'd go back to my form, I'd submit another response, I'd make it from a different name just to make sure it's working. I'll use my own website again. I'll use my LinkedIn profile, which is here. Again, and I would say value investing versus trend following. I'm being a bit lazy. Of course, what you could do is actually research some proper topics before you did this, which is you could get AI to do. Maybe if enough people ask us to, we'll make a video about how to get it to do the research in the first place. following anchor. There we go. Audience profile, high net worth in investors. And press submit. Now, normally, if you did that, the workflow would just start, but we haven't turned it on yet. We just want another piece of data in there to make sure that it's working properly. So the last thing we want to add is, where does this actual LinkedIn post end up? I generally am against sending it directly to LinkedIn because I like to edit stuff first and double check it's on message. Maybe I'm producing a few of them and saving them for later. So what I tend to do is either have it going to a Google Doc or have it go from my email to my email, for one of the better way of putting it, or to one of the team members' email who's responsible for that job. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my email, and in my case it's Outlook. You might be using Gmail. Those are the two most popular emails that we come across in our industry. So it's pretty easy. You just add a module and you look for Outlook, and you want something called create and send a message. And I need to check that it's connected to the correct Outlook, because I've got I don't know how I've connected them all, but I've got a few of them. And it seems okay. I'm going to put subject, new LinkedIn post, body content. Well, where's that going to come from? That's from the LinkedIn editor. And that will be, I know it's not obvious, but it is choices, message, content, like that. We don't need importance. And two recipients. So I'm going to send this to myself. But you could have, on the original form, you could have had an email there. I didn't put that on there to keep it simple. You could have an email on the original form for it to send to, and this would automatically populate if you wanted to do that. But for the moment, I'm just going to send it to myself. I'm going to change LinkedIn just so I can differentiate from my other messages. And it's not really that important, so I don't care. I'm going to not talk about that. And that's the content. Just going to send. That's all you need to do for that, and press save. And that is actually your whole module chained together. So the next thing we need to do is we need to save it. Again, I've forgotten to do this a few times, so save it down there. And then we need to run it one more time manually rather than turn it on for the latest bit of data we put in there. So we can right click on the original module and again choose where to start. This is just a manual way of double checking everything's working before you do anything else. And we've been lucky to get this far without a quick breakup. And let's choose my latest post, which is that one. I've put the name John there. That's the one we want to start from. Let's press save and let's press run once. And already there's a problem. And I think that's because I've connected the wrong email account. So let's check that. Yeah, I think I've just got the wrong email account. Try that out. Press save. Press save. And just that's the nature of having a lot of things connected together. You can end up doing that. So let's just choose where to start again. Choose manually. Choose the one with John as the first name and press save. And let's press run once again. And this time it seems to be working. So I'll stop there and wait for it to catch up, and then we'll start again when that's ready. So that's it. That's now arrived in my inbox. As you can see, here's your new LinkedIn post. And it has a headline. It's about investing. We changed it to value investing for the last example, before and after, some quotes from people currently around now, probably recent quotes, because we've asked Perplexity to do that. So what Perplexity does is it looks for more up-to-date recent information. And we've got a LinkedIn post sent from a form that we can use again and again. So the last thing we need to do is we need to just go in and turn on our scenario in Make. So it is waiting for us anytime we fill in the form, and that's it. So arguably that's a fairly simple automation, and it probably took us about half an hour to 40 minutes with some stops. I'd suggest it might take you maybe an hour to do the same thing, because you'll be adjusting the prompts to suit your business goals and target customers. And over time, you may need to adjust the prompts to suit any sort of long-term changes in your customer approach, or perhaps the fact you're going for a different market or something like that. So it's good to go back and sort of adjust them on a regular basis. Now, we build quite a lot of these for our customers, where we'll build something much more complicated that does a multitude of tasks. It will probably take us maybe a day to build and test, but it will save our customers, across the business, hundreds of hours a month and thousands of pounds in wasted spend, as well as freeing up time for handling new opportunities and inbound calls in a much faster and efficient way. And we build automations to save time and energy, and we build automations to generate more business and capture it faster. That's what we do. So if you want to help with something a bit more complex that you don't feel comfortable trying to build yourself, get in contact, message me down below. The best way is just to come onto our website and email us, which is Flycast Media. You can contact us here at our London office or our Watford office. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks a lot, and speak to you soon.